Welcome back to the Zach Knows podcast, where we'll be covering all the PV sports news, college football, NFL, NBA, and everything within the sports realm. Today I have probably a pretty long show for it to be my second show, obviously, but I'm used to this by now. We'll start off with the PV news. PV women's basketball played the University of Colorado, and it was not pretty. We ended up losing 79-38. Shayla Dobbins having 9 points. Key factor within the game, we had the second quarter, where we scored only 4 points totally in that quarter. That was probably our biggest issue. We were probably mostly outmatched physically, outsized. It's a different level of basketball. So like I said, we was using that game to gauge where we see our season going and how we feel like we would come back into conference play. Today they have another tough test on their schedule where they play the University of Arkansas, and you can see them right now if you're following PV. I think it's PVMU Panthers, where you can see their travels. They're obviously enjoying themselves, having a good time, just seeing across the country, playing in different places, and we look forward to see how they fare against. Hopefully they come back and have a better performance today. We give good luck to them. Next, we want to congratulate Juice Parker and Zarian Holcomb. They were both Box Toro All-Americans. Juice had 3 picks, 26 tackles, 12 PBUs, a punt return touchdown. And me and him was having a conversation after he scored in the Texas Southern game. He was like, I have never went a full season without touching the end zone. He was like, I had to. He was like, it was my only chance, and he took it. And you could just see him it was just natural. It just lined up for him. He always, like last year, he had 2 pick sixes, so it's just something he's came accustomed to throughout the duration of his whole career. And then for our other All-American, Zarian, he had 7 touchdowns, 26 receptions, and 350 yards. I think he was second overall in touchdowns, receiving touchdowns, and first for tight ends. So obviously we know his best game was the Jackson State game. He had 9 catches, 2 touchdowns, and almost single-handedly brought us back. Him and Trajan, their connection was starting. You could see it coming together at third and fourth quarter. So we want to congratulate both of them on a great season, and hopefully they're both going to be seniors next year. So good luck to them. And finally, want to congratulate our graduates. This weekend is the fall commencement. So Lavelle McCullers, Donovan Wheaton, Cedric Porter, Isaac Claiborne, Steve, and all the other athletes from the other sports that are graduating this weekend. I would like to send out my congratulations to them, and may you do well in your endeavors leaving Prairie View. But now we go on to the full slate of football games. I think I picked all 9, and the only game I missed was the UNT-Utah State game. But it starts off with the HBCU National Championship, where Alcorn faced North Carolina A&T. Early North Carolina A&T offense came out firing. The quarterback was 3 for 3 on their first drive. You could just see the confidence he came into that game with, because the last game he played, he scored 40 points, I want to say, and his offense was clicking on all cylinders. But after that first drive, the Alcorn defense, which is what they were known for this season, them being the best defense in the SWAC, they came to play. They slowed down them. They were physically imposing their will in the trenches. I think that was something that I didn't see coming because, like I said, the notion within the two conferences is the SWAC is more of a finesse style of play, and the MEAC is where physicality takes over. And you have North Carolina A&T has put out a couple of NFL prospects in the trenches, as well as the one they have in Chicago with Tariq Cohen. But that was a game that started off my day, and it came out like I thought it would. It got closer to the end. Obviously, we know. Sorry about that. Obviously, we know Noah Johnson he was the best player in the SWAC, and he came to play. He had to finish the game. Towards the end of the game, he was rolling out, pulled his hamstring on a throw to tie the game up with a questionable call at the end to give them 2-point conversion. He juggled the ball out of bounds, so I don't really think it was a catch. But hey, that's sometimes you just don't get those calls. NCAT came out with the overall victory. It was 24-22, and that was definitely a great way to start off our bowl weekend. Next, we went to the New Mexico Bowl, where obviously I just spoke about it. Utah State just thrashes North Texas 52-13. The quarterback had 359 for 4 touchdowns. He was there. It was just a different level of play. You could see why Utah State was ranked at certain points of the season. You could see how they got to play with teams in the Big Ten, such as Michigan State. I thought with UNT having the wherewithal to beat a team like Arkansas, even though it was a down year for them, I thought they would have the confidence going into this game to at least make it competitive. And Utah State just imposed their will. Utah State was playing, their head coach had left. I think they said their offensive line coach left. So it was essentially just coordinators and GAs. And for that team to make that type of performance, you can see they were fresh, they weren't beaten up, and they just came to play. Last year with them playing New Mexico State in their bowl and them losing that game in a couple of overtimes, I thought they would come out with that same type of feeling, and they didn't. They wanted to prove why they were playing at this level, why they were almost ranked, or why they were ranked, and why they have been doing good all season. Next game, Tulane plays Louisiana Lafayette. Tulane wins 41-24. Their running back had 35 carries, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. It was Bradwell. Just another team where Tulane just came out firing. I was flipping back and forth between the two games. So whenever Utah State obviously got out of hand, I would look at the Tulane game, and it wasn't much prettier. Louisiana Lafayette came back in the end to close the margin of victory, but like I said, it was not close. And then moving on to the Fresno State-Arizona State game, Fresno State pulled out the victory. Their running back also had a day for himself. He had 212 yards with 2 touchdowns. This was a game that went also according to plan, how I expected it, not just being Fresno State winning, but this was a more physical game. Arizona State not being a top-tier Pac-12 school, but you can see them rising. Head coach Herm Edwards has came in and turned the program around, gave them a new outlook, instilled some discipline. He's an old-school type of coach. He's been around the way. He's been obviously he coached for the Jets. He coached around the NFL. He played in the NFL, so he instills a type of football that I feel like is missed in certain aspects of the game. So for them, I just didn't see them having an offensive wherewithal to win, because Fresno State has one of the best defenses in the country, not just the WAC. So for them, I seen if they didn't get Benjamin the ball enough, I didn't see it being close, because that is their biggest weapon. But Fresno State having the best running defense, I felt like they had the tools to stop that, and they ultimately did. So Fresno State once again came out with that victory, leaning on their running back. And then finally, the game I told y'all nobody was really watching for, I would say, actually was probably the closest one that game and the Alcorn State, North Carolina A&T HBCU National Championship, Georgia Southern and Eastern Michigan, with Georgia Southern inching out the victory 23-21. That was a game where I'm at A&T Stadium watching Duncanville play Allen, which is 2 powerhouse high schools. Well, Allen being a powerhouse, Duncanville having Coach Samples coming around, turning that program into a winning program. The same thing he did with Skyline, one of the winningest coaches in the area and for the state, for that matter. But so I was having to pull that game up while I'm at the stadium, and I seen Georgia Southern was winning early. Eastern Michigan had made a push late, but Georgia State with the triple option offense, I think the quarterback only attempted 7 passes, which is funny because, once again, being in this day of age with a spread offense, with most teams having pass-heavy laden offense, especially at the college level where everybody's throwing it 30, 40, 50 times, to be able to still prove that running the ball can win you games and lead to a 10-win season, that gives a program like Georgia Southern, who doesn't have, I would say, the prowess in this field, in football, I would say that gives them, this is what they was fighting for. That's why they play so hard. And then finally, our last bowl game of the night was Appalachian State versus Middle Tennessee. Appalachian State won that game. They had their foot on the gas all night. Appalachian State is one of those teams that where when they get on top of you and they're gonna impose their will, they're gonna bring out all the stops. With it being a bowl game, a lot of times everything that these coaches haven't got on film, these new little wrinkles they put in their playbook, these trick plays, certain things like that, they're gonna put it on tape just because they want to see it, and they know they're never gonna play this team again. So they just call certain plays. So Appalachian State has a receiver. He throws for 2 touchdowns. He throws for the first touchdowns they scored of the day. He threw one on a double reverse to the quarterback. I said Appalachian State special. And then quarterback throws a backward pass, and he throws it again for a second touchdown of the day. They were both fairly short throws, I think 26 and 33 yards. But as far as, like I said, they're a team that imposes their will. Once they get ahead of you, they're not going to stop playing. And you could just see why they're turning into a program that is constantly growing. And ever since that Michigan victory 10 years ago, now you see where their program is now. It just shows you the dedication in not only their program, but what they've been doing all along, which is just believing in the process, trusting it, recruiting the right type of players, recruiting players that buy into their system, and they have found out a way to win. I think that was their 11th victory. This is, I think, 4 seasons in a row. I want to say they have 10 victories or more. So that's becoming a program outside of Power 5. I feel like they don't get the respect they deserve, but they're definitely a program that is becoming one we can lean on. So as far as for bowl games, I think I went, what is that, 5-1, 4-1, something like that. And then moving on to the Saturday games we had in the NFL, you had the Texans barely nudging out the Jets. My thing with the Texans is they have the defense, but when you go into the offensive side of the ball, it's Deshaun Watson and it's DeAndre Hopkins. And if those two aren't on that day, Texans going to lose that game. Deshaun Watson was the leading rusher, and he had, like 20 yards on 4. Like, that is not a recipe for success. The only reason they won that game is because they're playing the Jets. Like, when they're into the playoffs, because they are going to make the playoffs, they're probably going to clinch the division next week with a win, even though we'll talk about who their only person behind them is the Colts. But as far as for them being an actual contender, if they don't get a running back and they don't secure this offensive line, they're going to waste away some good years, with Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins. Because no matter their connection, if Deshaun Watson can't stand upright to get him the ball, it doesn't matter. There's no reason with that type of defense that they should have to go into overtime with the New York Jets. New York Jets, you can't name me a receiver outside of I know Terrell Pryor just because I like Terrell Pryor, but that game should not be close. And for it to be that close, for them to not have a leading rusher to even have 50 yards, for their quarterback to be their leading rusher, I told my co-host, like, that's not a team I want to get behind just because their style of winning is defensive heavy, but it's not running. So for them to not have a rusher that they can depend on, for them to force feed the ball to DeAndre Hopkins, and sometimes Deshaun Watson may not be standing upright to get him the ball, that's going to be an issue they have to think about. And that's my problem as far as me saying they're truly a contender, because when your offense is one-sided, let's say you pay the Patriots, they're going to double DeAndre Hopkins. What are you going to do then? You haven't developed a full relationship with your other weapons. Will Fuller is gone, so you don't have a deep threat to take the safety off. And you don't have a running back you can turn around and hand the ball to. So what are you going to do? For them to win, I feel like their defense has to score in the playoffs. Now when they're playing the Jets and they're just clinching a victory or trying to win the AFC South, Yeah, they're the AFC South. AFC South, I feel like they're going to have to find a running back. Either they're going to have to cut Alfred Blue and draft the one. Something's going to happen. But them having Deshaun Watson as their leading rusher, he had 3 carries for 20 yards at most. That's not a winning recipe for success. But let's talk about the game I really care about. And that's the Browns and the Broncos. The Browns beat the Broncos late. Jabril Peppers finally showed why Michigan let him play 5 positions, why he was a first-round draft pick, the talent he has. It's always been there, but I feel like he was always inside of his head. And as a player, as somebody who's been in that position, who knows how to talk people out of getting out of their own mind, I feel like somebody reached him. You can see the Jarvis Landry effect on that team where it's just him and Baker Mayfield have just influenced that team so much and gave them so much energy that they're feeding off of right now that you can't even put it into words the way this season is just turning around. Our interim head coach is 4-2 now. Baker Mayfield, he had a solid game. He threw a long touchdown to Perriman to start the game off. Brown started off with an early lead, and it just became a defensive slugfest with it being a young quarterback in Baker Mayfield and Case Keenum being a really good backup, not somebody I'd build my franchise around. As far as for the Broncos, I feel like they should have got Kirk Cousins, but that's neither here nor there. You can see this defense coming together. You can see why this is a hot commodity job across the NFL from 2 years ago being the laughingstock of the league, last year going 0-16 to now being in these games. These certain roster moves they made, like getting the safety from Green Bay, Jarvis Landry, these players have came in, seen the talent, and gave them the wherewithal to believe into themselves. And that's something like, yeah, it's cliche, the believing thing, but belief is a big part of sports. If you don't think you're gonna win, if you don't know how to win, you're not going to win, because these games aren't won and lost in the big picture. They're won and lost in small details and a couple of plays. And the plays that certain players don't think matter, the players that know how to win, they understand that if I don't win this play, we might lose this game. So certain things like that have to happen. Nick Chubb has another 100-yard rushing game. You see why they traded Carlos Hyde. You can finally see. They always say once the second year comes back from a knee injury, that's when you're most healthiest. So his last season at Georgia, he shared time with Sonny Michel and Swift, but now he's starting to get it together. Now he's fully healthy. Now you see him running. And it was just certain points in the game. Obviously, what showed you who this team is now with Greg Williams as their head coach, he believed in them on that 4th and 1 to hand the ball off to Chubb and understand, even if we don't get this first down, my defense is going to stop him. And then you go to the defense, they bailed him out. This game in the third quarter was getting completely sloppy with multiple penalties that I felt like they were just knick-knack penalties. The refs was just calling things just to call them. But you can see why these teams are the record they are, 5-7-1 and 6-7, and now being 6-8 and 6-7-1. Though these teams aren't where they need to be mentally, but you can see the growth within these teams. You can see players like Jabril Peppers coming into his own. David Njoku making that crucial catch on 3rd down, even while it was a defensive holding penalty on that drive. These players are starting to gain this confidence. And this is bigger than just this season. This is changing around that city because obviously with LeBron leaving, they felt like they didn't have anybody to lean on. And now they have a team they can believe in, players they can believe in. And ultimately, I feel like as of right now, they don't need to search for the coach. They just need to leave Greg Williams, let Freddie Kitchens run the offense. Like they have their system into place. They have everything they need to win. And I feel like they just have to buy in. But we have a new GM, so he might want to find his own guy. He might feel a certain type of way about Greg Williams, whatever he feels. But that was my recap for the Saturday NFL games. Like I said, I think the only game I got wrong was the Utah State game. Picked both of the NFL games right. So it's the reason this podcast is called Zach Knows. And then looking forward, a couple of the games to pick today. Looked at the NFL schedule today. It was not some good games on there. It's about 8 games total today. And it's not some quality NFL games. So I picked the best 5, including Monday night game, because my next show probably will be Wednesday, because I think that's the next day we have bowl games. That's what this is going to be centered around the bowls, because obviously that's a full slate. I've been talking all year off. I haven't even got to NBA yet. But, yeah, we're going to go to that. Today I pick Bears going to beat the Packers. I got the Patriots over the Steelers. I got the Colts beating the Cowboys, although if I want to be technical and cry for Browns playoffs berth, I don't really want them. I don't see them getting into the playoffs. But if we do, I'm not going to be mad and I'm going to be happy. So, obviously, if you're not mad yet. But that's neither here nor there. Got the Colts beating the Cowboys. Rams beating the Eagles tonight in the Sunday night game. And I got the Saints beating the Panthers tomorrow. And we're going to talk about this Panthers season just crumbling after they played Pittsburgh. After they played Pittsburgh, their season has just fallen on its face. Cam is not in his MVP form. Their defense is not what they would lean on. Dante Jackson, I feel like he's hit the rookie wall. As far as early in the season, he was playing really well. But as of now, he's starting to get, I think he's playing these better receivers. He's playing these more tenured receivers, and they're starting to get the best of him. But I still see him still being a solid player and ultimately coming up as a corner. But those were my picks for today's game. Obviously, I'll tweet out all of my picks later on today. Follow me at Zach is great. Zach spelled with an H is great _ on Twitter, Instagram, all of that. And then now let's move over to the NBA. Celtics lose to the Pistons. Blake goes for 27. The Celtics are very underwhelming. And I have to have this conversation a lot because obviously, one, I'm a Celtics fan, but that's neither here nor there. But I just feel like the ego has just crept into this locker room. Everybody is playing selfish. They're not playing for each other. And that's when you're led by that coach. His system is a team-led system. So when these players aren't playing for each other, that is something that hurts their chemistry. That is something that hurts them overall. So that's not a recipe for success. Obviously, shout out to Blake. I don't know if I said it already, but he had 27 points. Next, we're going to move over to the Lakers blowing out the Hornets. Lonzo and LeBron had a triple-double. The Lakers are forming together. I think their record is 18-10 now. They're slowly coming together. I still don't see them doing much within the playoffs just because offensively they're challenged because outside of LeBron they don't have somebody to lean on. Although Kuzma's game is growing and he is becoming that second option LeBron needs to be successful, not for any other reason just because you can't win a 1-on-5 game. But he's definitely – you can see why the Lakers are so against trading their young players because they have these certain sparks in the season where they play to their ability and they feel like if they give up on them and they let them go somewhere else, then they're going to see them flourish and then they're going to feel like they wasted the opportunity to see them in that purple and gold. So I understand why they still hold on to these players like Lonzo, Kuzma, Brandon Ingram certain times. But I don't see this team going very much far. Sorry again for that. My phone's about to die. But I just don't see this team going as far right now with this certain group of players just because offensively they're not going to be able to help LeBron much. And then finally we'll talk about the Thunders and beat the Clippers. Clippers are quietly having a nice season at this first quarter of the season. Their record is probably better than it's been the last couple of years since CP being gone. And they're slowly coming together. But Paul George has 33 last night. And you can see Russ hasn't – people thought in the summer whenever he went to the birthday party that Russ was not genuine when he was proclaiming that he needed him to come back. I feel like their relationship is genuine, and you can see that coming over into the court where Russ doesn't have a problem giving it up to Paul George, letting him score, understanding when he's hot, let him to keep feeding him, and Russ almost has another triple double. It's just become a part of his game. 13 points, 9 rebounds, 12 assists. That's just something we became accustomed to with Russell Westbrook these days. He's just, I guess you would say, becoming Mr. Triple Double. So, with that being said, we made it through a long list. I didn't think I was going to get that far, but thank you for watching. This is Zach Knows Podcast. I'll be back with you Wednesday to either predict the next set of bowl games or go over. I haven't checked the schedule yet. It's in my hand, but I'm a little focused recording right now, so thank you.